It's Mountain Monday, and you know what to do. Breathe in. And out. And breathe in. And out. Yeah, that first breathe in was abbreviated because Momo is sitting on me right now. And just as I did that, he pushed up my chest. And so it was. So yeah, those people who follow along with the breathing, sorry about that one. That was abbreviated on account of cat, right, Momo? Right. So as you can see by the title of this video, I'm talking about alignments, as in Dungeons and Dragons alignments, and decision making. And of course, Mountain Mondays tend to be inspired by the insanity that happens on Twitter over the weekend. And this particular Mountain Monday, there was so much insanity over the past week that it was hard to sort something out. But someone made a comment on YouTube that I think I can title into, because the thing that makes Mountain Monday different from just like a rant is I try to make it sort of it's a zen. It's trying to do something useful with it, or sort of be philosophical about it instead of just being raw mad like so many other people are on YouTube. I don't want to do that. I like solutions. I'm a solution person, INTJ represent. But like I said as well, the story the person asked me to tell is how my struggles maintaining a lawful good alignment in Neverwinter Nights led to my obsessed fascination with game design. So here's basically the story. People who have watched my videos know that I'm a pretty major Dungeons and Dragons nerd, but finding the right D&D group to play with is something of a challenge. I mean, the other D&D nerds I know live in places like North Carolina, so I don't have a gaming group, and I tried to do noob groups, but it just wasn't the same. People didn't have the experience. I was always running the games instead of playing the games, and it's a lot of prep, and I don't have the time to do that anymore. And the BioWare RPGs, Baldur's Gate and Icewind Dale and Neverwinter Nights and games like that allowed me to have that sort of Dungeons and Dragons experience without a gaming group. But Neverwinter Nights was my Waterloo because I like playing paladins. And I know because, paladins are the most annoying class. And that's the point. Like, I like playing paladins because I find them hilarious. It is so fun to be able to play this true believer type character, because paladins are driven by faith, right? I'm very much not in the real world. I'm all about facts and what I can prove, right? So it's super liberating. It's super fun for me to play these characters that are just, my God will tell me everything I need to know about what's right. I have no questions about the wisdom of my God. And so my go-to Dungeons and Dragons paladin style character is a guy with a deliberately low intelligence score, because you gotta pile on those this tells you the versions of Dungeons & Dragons. The scores came from the, you have to have high strength, high fortitude, and then high charisma. That's how I like. So the intelligence and the wisdom scores took a bit of a knock, because I figure a religious zealot will not be especially wise, right? And so my paladin character's named Felspar, as in Fool's Gold. And so he has his long, flowing blonde hair, and, he's that stereotypical champion with the shining, gleaming armor and the long blonde locks and the whole thing. But he's not very smart. But you shouldn't have to be super smart to play a paladin, because your god tells you everything you need to know. And this is the difference between playing tabletop Dungeons and Dragons and playing one of these RPGs. Because if you get a gaming group that understands why this is hilarious, that you've basically got the Dudley Do-Right of paladins on your team, it's a really fun time. But a video game cannot love you that way. So I built my character, and I mean, one of the things about those Forgotten Realms games, the Bioware games, the isometric ones, where you re-rolled a gazillion times to get the best possible character roll you could. That was part of the strategy going in. It wasn't like, boom, one roll, go, you play the ball where it lies. No, you re-rolled a million times to get a good character. So I got it where I wanted to go, and I was in, and I had a really hard time predicting what the lawful good responses were, because it's tricky in the Forgotten Realms, right? Because with a paladin, you're dealing with two things, and this is the thing that makes, and lawful goods are paladins are lawful good by default to stop them from being this power gaming character, because they're a warrior that has some healing spells. They're an ultimate tank, and so in order to check them a little, to maintain the game balance, you must play lawful good. And if you slip out of lawful good, you lose your additional paladin abilities. Now, this went wrong for me in two ways in Neverwinter Nights. The first way was I kept slipping below lawful good and having to reload a past save, because my idea of lawful and the game's idea of lawful were not the same. It's that classic dissonance that people talk about in game design. And because to me, I was following lawful means, yes, I obey the laws of the land, meaning I don't break into people's houses. I don't steal things. I don't, slaughter people in the streets. All that's well and good. But I also have to, be lawful to my deity. And I believe I was a paladin of Helm. And so I was like, okay, I have to make my decisions based on the laws of the land. Yes, but also the laws of the religion that give me my powers. That is because there's religious law, and then there's sort of secular law, for lack of a better term. And it was that, I'm a paladin of Helm. This is lawful to me. The game was saying, no, it's not. Boom. Alignment check. Damn it. And it was really frustrating, especially since the main antagonist in Neverwinter Nights is a fallen paladin who somehow manages to have all these crazy abilities because they were using the Dark Paladin kit, which is, of course, not accessible to the player, just this character. And then, of course, it's not that she's really bad. She's just fallen. It's like, why do I lose my powers, but she doesn't? I don't like her. And so that got me into, okay, why was this disconnect happening? Because I knew I was an experienced RPG player, and I realized the difficulty of programming a game system that was designed for tabletop with the flexibility of a human response with the Dungeon Master into a game that doesn't have that. And of course, Neverwinter Nights was designed to have those modules so people could play on their own. It didn't work as well as I think they'd hoped. That's sort of the holy grail, I think, of RPG stuff, that people keep trying to make games where people can make their own campaigns and get as close to that pen and paper experience as you can. And it's really an uncanny valley in design. And that's when I started realizing, no, video games aren't face-to-face tabletop experiences. Video games are games. And so there are some things that a video game will do exceptionally well that you can't get in a pen and paper experience, like those awesome graphics, like the Elite Gear, these long experiences, because it's very hard to continue lengthy RPG campaigns in pen and paper, because you have to get everybody back together week after week, right? Whereas those tabletop experiences can adapt as you go. And it's much harder for a game to adapt that way, because I had, cut my teeth on playing paladins in these experiences with other people, and we could sort of talk about what lawful good meant. And that's what got me interested in instead of just playing games and enjoying games, learning about the design process in games. And I really do believe that a good game or a bad game, a responsible game and an irresponsible game, don't come down to the subject matter, don't come down to character designs. They come down to game design. and what those background choices are. The plot can be anything, right? The character can be anything. If the game is designed as a cohesive whole that makes sense, anything can work. And I mean, the classic example I use all the time is the American McGee's Alice games. I mean, on paper, you would think that the game would be horribly anti-women. I mean, my God, an underage girl that's taken advantage of and all that stuff. But people love these games. And it's because they were crafted with intent, right? There was, yes, a struggle between the publisher and the developer about how far to go, and it was sort of backgrounded in the first game. But even that first game, I got where they were going with it. Like, I got that it was an abuse allegory, and but it was well done, and this whole idea of this internal struggle in an adventure game made so much sense in a video game. Now, that would be a really creepy thing to play out with your friends. Like, I'm going to roleplay as the dungeon master, the creepy rapist who's coming after you. No, kind of uncomfortable. So, video games can use that slight, impersonal feeling. There's no actual other person doing that to you to tackle some really tough stuff. And I mean, that was what I was talking to Drew Casente about with Jennifer Ann's group last week, about how video games can really educate and encourage empathy on tough issues by allowing people to explore at their own pace. Now, we're having issues in the gaming industry and a real struggle for the soul of game design in this culture war that's infecting everything. And it came to a head again this weekend, and I stepped in it again. People think a lot of funny things about me, but one of the things that I think a lot of people don't understand is I put things out on Twitter just to talk to the people that follow me on Twitter. Like, Twitter is very much a conversation to me. If you're not expecting responses on Twitter, don't tweet that thing, right? And so I saw the unfolding brouhaha with Dead or Alive Extreme 3 and the Ian Miles Chong review that got him labeled a pedophile. And I saw I could kind of see, okay, people are bleh. It was a turn of phrase, right? It was a colloquialism he used that people deliberately warped to claim he wanted to molest anime video game characters who people claimed were 13, they weren't. You can believe that anime characters look as young as you want. First of all, anime deliberately slightly displaces the appearance. There's a sort of uncanny valley property to anime style characters that to me creeps me out. But for people who are used to anime, that's just that nod that this is fantasy. This isn't a real person. This is a character. And, that's an important displacement in the brain. It's the same thing as, cartoon violence versus real violence. There's, sex in the real world, which is kind of awkward and scary, which is why it's called intimacy. And then there's fantasy sex, which no one can ever really get hurt in, right? But then, the other thing is that Japanese cultural norms, and if you've seen the dialogue options interview I did with Ollie Barter, he talked about this. And guys, please check out his columns on Forbes. He says some very, very insightful things about, as a Westerner living in Japan. He's, he writes about Japanese toys, but he's also writing about, Japanese culture for Westerners. And I think he's doing really amazing work that way because there's so few people who have that combination of both. But I don't think it's right to, with all this lecturing about cultural appropriation goes, there's cultural appropriation, there's cultural condemnation. And the Japanese have a completely inverted idea of what's appropriate for young people. They think less violence and more sex is appropriate for young people. And who's to say they're right? And, or who's to say we're right? It's just a different cultural weight put on different things, right? And so I think a lot of people don't realize that when you're going, oh, that's perverse about Japanese content, you're actually making a cultural judgment. And people are like, well, how can you take a relativistic approach and be a lawful good character? Well, my laws include, a respect for other cultures. I think that autonomy of other cultures is exceptionally important. That's why it's laws and not just raw sort of, I'm going to inflict my morals. Laws are about boundaries, right? And there are a lot of people out there who don't set those boundaries on themselves. And so they think it's all right to just call someone any name that's convenient to win. And the problem is they don't win. Just everybody loses. Like, okay, they might make Ian look bad temporarily. But for God's sakes, you follow the guy long enough, you're going to figure out he's actually not a pedophile. Just read the review. He didn't give the game a good score. He wasn't getting off on the game. He said it was basically boring and poorly designed. He just wasn't prepared to condemn people who like the series simply because they like the series. And I think he did his job there. But then when I tweeted, are people really harassing him over this? This idiot jumped in and basically said, I didn't see you defending, and he mentioned 2 reviews I didn't even know were things. So no, I didn't defend them because I didn't know about them. But he mentioned the Arthur Geis, whatever his last name is, Bayonetta 2 review. And I said, at the time, I was still saying that it's just his opinion. I disagree with his opinion, but it's just his opinion. And he called me a liar for saying that. He just out and said I lied. And his alleged proof were 2 tweets where I was just saying that it's very strange that Polygon was giving a 7.5 to Bayonetta because it's Bayonetta 2 because it's allegedly sexist, but they gave Grand Theft Auto 5 a 9.5, even though, by the same metric, you'd have to criticize both games, and this is the difficulty with the game review process right now, right? Like, I'm telling you, there are no review standards at most major websites. It's just give it a score out of 5 based on what you think. So 2 reviewers at a site can give radically different opinions on games that are very similar. And so that makes one service's reviews practically useless to the average player, because unless a reviewer you trust reviews that game, you can't trust the site overall. And that's very frustrating. Like, I understand players' frustration with that, because there can be one great review on a website and the next one's not so good, and then the next one's complete rubbish. I mean, there's no quality control. But this was a classic example of, I believe, someone who wanted to believe I was a liar because it's convenient for them. And so they found this apples and oranges narrative device. I won't even call it evidence because it had nothing to do with what he was actually trying to prove. And, he needed to believe that I was inconsistent. He needed to believe that I was lying. And so people are saying he's a troll. I didn't really get that sense from him. He was legitimately angry. And my test for that was when I said, look, I will talk to you, but you need to calm down. And the response was, I don't calm down around people who bargain in bad faith. And I'm like, oh, okay, this is not a troll. This is a very angry, hateful person. This is a person full of rage, because a troll is not invested in this stuff. And the minute an actual troll admits they're angry, the troll loses. I mean, this is classic trolling. Trolls are not invested in the outcome. Trolls just want the lulz, right? So this guy's not a troll, which that's not a defense. Don't get me wrong. That, to me, I could respect a good troll better than somebody who actually thinks I'm some sort of antichrist. Like, one is an asshole. The other is delusional, right? That's the scary thing. But it all comes from how the systems you create, the code, the programming, the design in your head of how you approach problems, and that can be trained. You can train yourself away from a knee-jerk emotional response and into something more logical. It can be done, says the lawful good alignment. I know, it's easier for me because of that alignment than somebody who is of a more chaotic disposition, right? But it can be done if you choose to, and not everybody is interested in developing that skill. But if you're not careful and you don't have sort of a systematic approach to these debates, you end up looking like an idiot more often than not. And I mean, this guy even pulled because a couple of other people were like, what? Because he told me I was a gator, meaning I'm pro Gamergate. And we're not going to get into all the reasons why that's absurd, but a few people who sort of knew better jumped in because it's Twitter. It's a public conversation. And he actually accused one of these guys of only agreeing with me because he wanted to sleep with me. He didn't use such a nice term. It was an F word. But the guy turned out to be gay. And like, even in the face of that, the guy couldn't recognize that he was not being logical. He really had no case, so to speak. He was just having an emotional knee-jerk reaction and trying to cherry pick facts that would justify his attack on another person, people actually, based on that emotional response. And this has been an ongoing pattern in these debates over games. And now, neutral good types of characters are better negotiators because they have more patience to deal with those chaotic types. I can fake it, but I find it exceptionally frustrating when someone is just going based on feels and not really having any sort of structure to the way they're approaching the problem. It's not lawful enough for me. But I really do think that the concept of a lawful good voice in this whole culture war debate is something we need more of. We need more lawful good speakers in this thing. Even lawful evil speakers, because, lawful evil, they're out for selfish reasons, but at least they're playing by some sort of rules, some sort of code. We need more lawful aligned characters in this thing because there's too much changing the rules when the rules don't benefit a given faction or a given speaker. And, people are like, why are you feeding the trolls? They're getting your attention. That's what they want. And I said to them, it actually interests me to see how somebody like this thinks, to see how they're spinning their wheels trying to maintain a conclusion that is just, I know it's not true what they're accusing me of. Sorry, I'm pulling a Momo hair out of my mouth. I know it's not true what they're accusing me of. So I am watching cognitive dissonance. I am watching a logical fallacy in action. What they are saying cannot be true. So it's fascinating to see them try to make it true. And, that is also the confidence that comes with being a lawful good character, because you're so rule oriented that when somebody comes at you that way, you're more assured that your position is solid. I'm mistaken sometimes in that belief. It's not as solid as I thought it was, but having confidence in and being 100% right are, of course, not the same thing. I'm confident enough in my position to be accepting that I won't be 100% right. And I can admit I'm wrong when I'm wrong because my personal code requires me to admit that I'm wrong when I'm wrong. Of course, my personal code also will not allow me to lie and say, well, I'm sorry when I don't actually mean it. And so people are going to get an authentic opinion out of me. Now, people, unfortunately, I think are so unused to the realities of an authentic opinion that they see me as a flip-flopper, or they see me as a liar, or all that stuff. And that's very sad. Because again, like I said, I know I'm not lying. And the other unfortunate thing about internet conversations is that people think a search result is a gotcha. And, I say this as someone who had, in the early days of Gamergate, people went through every single tweet I ever wrote on both sides. They were actually talking. I was watching them on 4chan. That shows you how far back it goes. They were divvying up my tweets in 3 to 6 month sections and not just doing searches, going through them all one by one to try to find dirt. And they found 3 tweets. Again, hooray, Lawful Good. In all that time, I've been on Twitter for years, and that's all they found. Go me. And now the other side is doing it. I mean, Gamer got cherry picked before, but now they're back at it again because they don't like that I'm defending dancing girls, and they don't like that I'm defending Ian Miles Chong, and it's, the enemy of my enemy sort of thing. It's the friend of my enemy, actually. But the thing about lawful good characters also is you don't go along to get along. You don't violate your principles. You don't suddenly say, I'm going to go against my better judgment. I'm going to go against what I believe is right to fit in or to make things easier for myself. And I tell you, I would be a lot further ahead if I did that. And that's the funny thing. There's this misperception that liars on the internet get caught. And that's absolutely not true. I have seen people deliberately and successfully lie online over and over and over again. And, sometimes you can't even talk about it because something is under NDA or something is, there are sometimes you just can't talk. And again, lawful good, signed an agreement, must honor the agreement, right? But you're sitting there and going, you piece of garbage. And that's when it becomes tricky as a lawful good character, because your lawful side is at war with your good side. Your good side is don't let them lie to people. Your lawful side says you made a promise. And that's when it becomes difficult. And that's when you have to find a way to do the right thing. And not the easy thing, the right thing, but also the lawful thing. You can't go back on your word. And that makes it difficult because sometimes you have to only warn people, hey, watch your step around this person. But then what do you get on the internet? Show me evidence. And you can't, because that would break a confidentiality agreement. And at that point, you just have to sit back and recognize you did all you could. You tried to give people a warning without, violating. And a chaotic good character would have just gone, screw it. Forget the promise I made. The greater good prevails. I'm going to tell them. It's different. I'm not saying my way's better. I'm just saying my way is my way. And I think if I was a little more renegade that way, I'd probably be further ahead. I think that if I was able to compromise my principles for my bottom line more, I'd probably be more financially successful. The problem is that's not the way I'm wired, and I couldn't live with myself. But I mean, the awesome thing is I'm really good at living with myself. When I go to bed at night, when I get up first thing in the morning, I'm not full of self-doubt. And that's, that surety is the awesome thing about being lawful good. And Neverwinter Nights denied me that surety. I was constantly questioning myself, like, why do I keep losing? And so that is sort of the meditation, the lawful good alignment meditation for the week. Wouldn't it be interesting to do a series of meditations on the different D&D alignments? I might do that. That is kind of interesting. The alignments don't exist in 5th edition anymore, but c'est la vie. Let's wrap up. That's enough for today. Breathe in. And out. And breathe in. And out.